Welcome to our series on Jeffersonian Florida, and we're going to start with Thomas Jefferson himself. And by the way, a lot of these topics are covered in my book, The American Conquest of Florida, which is now on sale in hardcover, Kindle edition, and paperback from Amazon.com. At least a lot of the topics we're going to discuss in the first few videos of this series, starting today with Thomas Jefferson himself and the Louisiana Purchase. So this is what Florida, or West Florida specifically, which is going to be the focus today, looked like in British times after the British acquired Florida in the Treaty of Paris of 1763, which ended the 7 Years' War / French and Indian War. We call it French and Indian War here in North America. I know in India they call it the 7 Years' War, and there was a lot of fighting in India between the British and the French and French allies in that war as well. So Thomas Jefferson becomes president in 1801, and he wants to purchase land to expand the United States. In 1800, as many of you know now, but the Americans didn't realize at the time, Spain had secretly ceded Louisiana back to France. Spain had gained Louisiana in the 1763 Treaty of Paris. Now, Jefferson becomes president in 1801, and his focus was on acquiring New Orleans. His second focus was on acquiring Florida. The rest of Louisiana, the areas that his private secretary Meriwether Lewis, along with Clark, explored after, those were not a priority. Now, based on that 1800 cession from Spain to France, American officials assumed West Florida had been ceded by the Spanish as well back to France. But in reality, West Florida remained in Spanish hands and completely out of the Louisiana Purchase. Once Louisiana was purchased, the actual claim was not known for sure. And Thomas Jefferson and his administration believed West Florida was part of the purchase. But Spanish authorities made it clear it wasn't part of the purchase. The Spanish perspective was Spain now had the United States on the west and to the north of Florida with the completion of the Louisiana Purchase. This was coupled by the increasing number of American settlers in Florida itself, particularly in East Florida. Now, think about how this impacted Mexico in the 1820s and 1830s as Tejas, filled up with American settlers. The conflicts in Florida that would come as a result of this, that we're going to talk about in this series, were precursors to what happened later in Texas. Florida had become the clear American target. And as I said earlier, many U.S. negotiators were unsatisfied with the Louisiana Purchase. And more importantly, large elements of the American public, particularly Southerners and Republicans or Democrats, whatever you want to call them, the backers of Jefferson's party. Now, the Louisiana Purchase ends up being one of the great bargains in human history, but it still doesn't satisfy public opinion. Public opinion was, how could the United States have spent $15 million and not get its hands on Florida, which was the thing they wanted? So in 1804, Secretary of State James Madison, who is Jefferson's protege and closest political associate throughout most of his career, attempted to correspond with France on the matter of Florida. Talleyrand, at this point serving as the foreign minister for Napoleon, we know Talleyrand was a survivor, would become treacherous towards Napoleon a decade later, and was, in fact, part of the... He'd been involved in just about every French government. He was very adept at switching sides. I don't want to get into French domestic politics at this point, Revolutionary France domestic politics, but Talleyrand replies unequivocally that Florida is not part of the purchase. And then, as a result, Congress passed what they called the, quote, Mobile Act, which was a clear test of Spanish sovereignty. This is with Jefferson's approval. It claimed the waterways leading south into the areas of what are now the Gulf coasts of Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida were in fact American territory. The actual waterways, the Apalachicola River, the Perdido River, and the Escambia River, and one or two other rivers west of there. This proved very difficult to enforce, and Jefferson wanted to test the Spanish resolve to see if he could just kind of take Florida. In 1804, James Monroe, another future president, another person very clearly associated with Jefferson and Madison, and of course a Virginian as well, was sent as a special envoy to kind of barnstorm the tours of Europe to negotiate the West Florida question. His initial goal was to secure the lands east of the Perdido River, which or west of the Perdido River, which of course is from the Mobile area out towards Baton Rouge. And he was unsuccessful with that. And in fact, in 1805, there was an incident at the mouth of the St. Mary's River, which is Cumberland Sound area, the area you can view from Fort Clinch now on the Florida side in Fernandina Beach. And if you're in Cumberland Islands National Seashore in Georgia, you can access it from St. Mary's, Georgia. Pitted British naval vessels against Spanish and French privateers. And that would be a precursor of some of the armed conflicts we would see to come around Florida. And Jeffersonian America, at this point, viewed anything the British did with suspicion and were particularly concerned about increasing British influence in Florida. And that is where we will pick up with this narrative next week. Thanks for watching.